cartilage clamps right there. What the heck is that? I don't know, a piece of something. Okay, these big flat cartilages right here, those are the thyroid cartilages, right? Here and here. And if you see, well, you can even see the little bump on this one. See the little bump right there? That's his Adam's apple. The ventral median prominence, or the Adam's apple. Right, little bump.
So does that mean it's a male? Like, is that like in humans?
Well, we'll have to see. We'll go down there and check it out. Okay. Lying behind the trachea is this bigger, much more flexible tube. That's the esophagus. Okay, the esophagus has to be flexible. When the bolus of food comes in, it has to expand. Okay? And if you can feel up here, you can actually feel, you can feel the hyoid bone if you feel right up in here. We know where that is already, right? It's way up in here.
Yep.
Okay? Again, if the thyroid glands were around, they would be sitting on either side of that thyroid cartilage. I don't know where those are. Coming down here. This might have a little bit of thymus tissue here. I'm not sure if that's thymus or fat. Well, we'll presume it's thymus. The thymus gland sits towards the end of the trachea in this area right here. Okay, as you age, the thymus is reabsorbed. So in someone your age or my age, we wouldn't have it anymore. So the older cats, it's the same thing. It gets reabsorbed. Okay? And coming down further, here are the lungs, right? Here and here. You don't need to know all the different lobes. You just need to be able to recognize them as lung tissue. And lung tissue, if you feel it, is very spongy, right? Because it's got all those little air sacs in there. Okay? And then coming down here further, this right here,
I like to try to show people that,
this thin layer of very thick muscle right here, that's the diaphragm. The diaphragm separates your chest from your abdomen. You need to keep your chest cavity sealed, right? That's one of those cavities that's sealed from the outside. And that's because you need to be able to change pressure to bring air in or push air out. So when you breathe in, the ribs come up and out, the diaphragm is pulled down. That increases the volume in your chest, which decreases pressure in your chest, and air goes in. When you exhale, the ribs come down, the diaphragm comes back up. You've decreased volume, which means you've increased volume in your chest. Increased pressure in your chest. Air comes out. Okay? If you can't change pressure, you can't breathe. If I were to put a hole right here, I might not hit anything vital, but she would die because she would not be able to change pressure because that cavity would then be open to the outside.
But you can put a tube right on the side to take the blood out of the thing, right?
Well, yeah, you can.
And
But I'm just saying, you need to make sure to breathe that you have to be able to change pressure.
Okay.
Okay? So even if I shot you there, if we plugged up the hole, you'd be okay. All right? So the point of telling you all that is to have you understand that in order for that diaphragm to move, it has to be innervated, right? There has to be nerves telling it to move. And coming down on either side of the heart are these little strings of nerve right here. This little string right there. See that? And that goes directly into this side of the diaphragm. Okay? That's the phrenic nerve. There's one on each side. Begins with a P.
Getting more on your phone than
Phrenic nerve. Okay? One of it runs down one side of the heart, innervates that side of the diaphragm, and the other one is over here somewhere. The other one is here, running down along this side of the heart, innervating this side of the diaphragm. Okay? A friend of mine actually had some surgery in this area. They nicked one of her phrenic nerves, and now half of her diaphragm is paralyzed. Okay, so that's the diaphragm. When they talk about the central tendon of the diaphragm, it's a little bit hard to see. The central tendon of the diaphragm is just a white area. It is hard to see in this guy. I don't even see it actually in this one. There should be like a little white crescent in here, and all that is where all of the muscle fibers end. There's no muscle fiber there, so it looks white, for whatever that's worth. Okay, so that's our diaphragm. Running behind the trachea is the esophagus, right? The esophagus clearly needs to get through the diaphragm to get to the stomach, which is in the abdomen. Okay, and if we look where that esophagus is, these These things are really tight.
I know, I had my hands up in there. It was not easy.
No, it's not easy. If you look down in there, you see this white right here? You see that?
Yeah.
That's the esophagus. Okay, coming down.
I see it from here.
Yeah. And the esophagus goes through the diaphragm at a specific point. That's called the hiatus. And sometimes, especially in preemies, that tissue can rip. That diaphragm tissue rips, so the hole gets bigger, and you can have actually abdominal contents coming up into the chest cavity, so they have to go in and close that off. That's called a hiatal hernia. Okay? So it goes through the hiatus. Get this out of the way. And here's the stomach. These cats have all been well fed before they've been
They're
sacrificed.
healthy and they're juicy.
But look at the stomach. The stomach is full. Okay, this is all stomach right here. This whole
They're like really juicy. I
stomach
couldn't
is
help
gross.
it.
this whole
Huh?
this whole thing right here, this whole J-shaped thing is the stomach. Okay? And if you look up here, you can see where that esophagus has come through now. Right here. Right there. Where it's coming through the diaphragm. Okay?
That's cool.
And this upper area of the stomach right here, where it comes through, the top of the stomach here is called the fundus. And where that esophagus meets the top of the stomach, there's a sphincter called the esophageal sphincter. And what that does is once the food goes into the stomach, that purse string of muscle closes up and closes off the stomach. Okay? And that's important because once that food comes in here, there's glands in the stomach that secrete hydrochloric acid. So it becomes a very acidic environment. But there's also glands in the stomach that secrete mucus. So your stomach lining has a thick mucus layer on it, which protects it from the acid. And occasionally you can get holes in that mucus layer where the acid actually reaches the stomach lining. That's called an ulcer. Okay? But the esophagus has no such mucus lining. So whenever that acid stuff comes back up into the esophagus, it's burning, it's wearing away the lining of the esophagus. Okay? And that's reflux disease. Okay? So, assuming everything works well, then we got everything in the stomach churns it around, mixes it all up with acid. So the next spot where it's going to go is into the small intestines. Small intestines also does not have a mucus lining. Okay, you've got a pH, this chyme, which is the goo, which when it gets all gooey is called chyme, has a pH of about 2. If that were to just go into the small intestines, we'd burn the small intestines out. So, first thing we got to do is, number one, we have to regulate flow, so we only release the chyme into the small intestines, one little drop at a time. And to do that, we need another sphincter, which is right at the end of the stomach here, right before it meets the small intestines. And that's called the pyloric sphincter because this little J end here is the pyloric region of the stomach. Okay, so you have the fundus up here, you have the body, which is all this, and then you have the pyloric region down here. Okay? So there's a pyloric sphincter to regulate flow from the stomach into the small intestines. Okay? So as soon as we release a little drop of that acidic chyme into the small intestines, it has to be neutralized. That's the job primarily of the pancreas. The pancreas is a glandular organ that runs from the spleen under the stomach over to the first part of the small intestines. This is the spleen. This beef jerky here, beef teriyaki, this is the spleen. This material right here attached to the spleen, all of this, and all of this, and all of this is pancreas tissue. So it runs from the spleen, around under the stomach, onto the first part of the small intestines. Okay? The pancreas produces a whole host of digestive enzymes, and it secretes those enzymes in a very alkaline solution, a very basic solution. So every time some acid chyme comes in, the pancreas releases some alkaline solution with enzymes to neutralize it. Okay? Also, so all of that happens right at the beginning of the small intestines, right after that chyme gets in there. Also coming in right at the beginning of the small intestines, this guy's really a little bit contorted here, isn't he? This big thing right here, this big lobed organ right here, this is liver. And if I have no idea where your gallbladder.
I can't find it.
Where's the gallbladder?
I can't find it. I've looked all over, asked them. She can't find it either. I feel so much
Must have had
better.
it removed.
I'm like, it's like a green, hunter green organ.
It should be like right. It should be like right here.
Yeah, thank you. I thought
somebody
I was
cut it
going
out,
crazy.
maybe? Somebody must have cut it out.
It has no gallbladder.
No, it does not.
I don't either. So
It should be right here because here's the look. Here's the bile duct coming down here, and And here's the hepatic ducts coming in over here. So you have ducts coming in from. Well, it's really hard to tell which one's the common bile duct without a gallbladder. It's one of these. My guess is it's this right here. So you should have a gallbladder right here, which is kind of a greenish sac, because the liver produces bile, which is a collection of salts, and it stores those salts in the gallbladder, and the gallbladder releases them through this duct here, which comes down from the. Let's assume our gallbladder is here, right? It's the cystic duct or the bile duct. Couldn't think of
Bile
what it-
duct.
right? It's going to release the bile into the first part of the duodenum. Also coming in from the liver itself, you have hepatic ducts that come in, and they all join up and go in one tube, right? That's called the common bile duct. That also joins with the duct from the pancreas. So it all goes in together all at once right in the beginning of the small intestines. This first, about 4 inches, this first U shape here of the small intestines is called the duodenum. It's in the duodenum where chemical digestion is completed.
And that's the first.
Okay? It's about the first 4 inches is the duodenum. So you've got digestive enzymes coming in from the pancreas. You've got bile coming in from the gallbladder. You've got enzymes coming in from the liver directly. Okay? All of that stuff digests whatever you've eaten in just this 4 inches. Okay? That's the duodenum. The next really curly-Q part of the small intestines, all this stuff here, and by the way, all that is held in a very specific orientation by all this beautiful mesenteric membrane here with all that blood flow. This is the jejunum. This is where absorption happens, right? The rest of the small intestines is for absorption. We've broken it all down. Now you got to absorb it all, okay? And then about the last 4 inches, this last little U shape here, this is the ileum. Okay, so we have duodenum, jejunum, ileum.
So where would you say it ends from the jejunum?
It's just about the first 4
Is there any
inches.
kind
It's
of
like this little. It's
There's
like
no
the
color
last.
difference or
No.
anything? Okay.
No, it's like the last little U shape. Okay, so that's ileum, and then we have the large intestines, and you can see where the small intestines, where the ileum meets the large intestines, and there's this little bulb right here. If you feel it, it's a little hard bulb right here. That's another sphincter. That's the ileocecal sphincter. Okay, that regulates flow from the small intestines to the large intestines, and it's called the ileocecal sphincter because this little bulb right here, this little flap of tissue right here, is the cecum. If this were humans, this would be an appendix. This is where our appendix is. Cats don't have an appendix; they have a cecum. Okay.
That's dangerous.
So there's a valve, the ileocecal valve regulates flow from the small intestines to the large intestines. And if we had this in the right orientation, something like that, we would have an ascending, a transverse, and a descending colon. Okay? And then again, if this were a human, then this lower right quadrant would be your appendix, right? Way down here. Okay? This colon, this descending colon, is held in place by this membrane called the mesocolon, and what that does is it holds it up against the back body wall in the right orientation so that we don't get kinks. That would be really bad. Okay? Because the large intestines now is going to resorb all the water, and then the waste would flow down, you can't see it yet, but would flow down to the rectum where it's compacted and stored, and then finally elimination through the anus. Okay? Let's go back up here for a minute. All this gooey, this stuff, this just looks nasty. This right here, this fatty apron, that's called the greater omentum. And it's called the greater omentum because it is attached to the greater curvature or the big curve of the stomach. Okay, and it just forms a nice apron covering everything. And then there's the lesser omentum. If you look on the smaller curve of the stomach, this stuff right here, which I can't pick up too well, this stuff right here, this is all the lesser omentum. All this gooey stuff right here. Okay?
Did you do the face?
Not yet.
Or, okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What else?
That's enough.
I think we did the mesentery, we did ileum, we
What
did
about
that.
the
Did I do everything?
spleen?
We did the spleen.
The spleen. The spleen's the beef teriyaki.
We did it.
Where's the pancreas
Okay.
again?
The pancreas runs from the spleen under the stomach around to the duodenum. So if we lay it out here, so here's our spleen, okay? All of this is pancreatic tissue here, right under the stomach, and all of this over onto the duodenum is all.
It's pancreatic tissue, but the
Uh-huh.
pancreas itself is just little, right?
But that's what it is.
This is the pancreas.
Oh, that is the pancreas? The whole thing is the pancreas?
Yep.
Okay.
It's sort of a nebulous kind of thing, so it's all glandular.
Okay.
And what does it do again? The pancreas?
The pancreas, well, its digestive function is to produce a whole host of digestive enzymes
Okay.
and secrete them in that basic solution to
Okay,
neutralize
so
the
all
chyme.
it holds is like liquids.
So if they just label here, that's what's the
That's pancreas.
I know they get tricky on you.
Okay. And then lastly, we have the glands.
I didn't see any ducts.
What?
Ducts.
The ducts.
Oh.
Yeah, I haven't seen any good ducts either. Actually, the other cats didn't have them either. Okay, there's 3 salivary glands. If you find the ear, really? If you find the ear and you look right below the ear, so
pulled off his tag.
this is this is no deposit, no return, I guess. This again is the masseter muscle. We know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right below the ear, you'll see this little bulb right here. That's called the parotid gland right there. That's the parotid gland. And then where the heck is the submandibular gland is this one here below it. And there should be, I don't see a duct.
Mm-mm.
You should see, you should see a duct running right across the face of the masseter muscle. That's the parotid duct carrying the saliva into the back of the mouth. But I have no idea where it is. And the little sublingual, oh, here's part of it. Here's part of it right here. The sublingual is really tiny, and it's really deep, and it's really hard to see. Okay.
So you're trying to say
Parotid.
it's not gonna be on test.
I'm going to say it's really hard for them to show that to you. So parotid, submandibular, there should be a parotid duct running across here that you can see, and the sublingual is deep. It's deep in here. Not so good. Well, maybe this is the duct on this side, huh? I don't know. It's hard to tell. That might be the duct on this side, Tanya. Right there.
Just that line.
Yeah. I mean, it's really obvious. It runs right across the masseter muscle from the parotid gland, which is right here.
Would it be like more raised, like more like how
It should
how the
be,
trachea
yeah.
is like rounded?